Today's learning is sponsored by Nechama Cox for Refuah Shlema for Mordechai Velvel and Esther Fega. To sponsor a day of learning, send me an email.
We're on Shabbat, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Yud, the 10th Mishnah in the first chapter of Masechet Shabbat. So until now we've been learning the machloka between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel about whether kelim, whether utensils or vessels have to be shobet, have to rest on Shabbat. Okay, so now we're going to continue an agreement between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel what you cannot do on erev Shabbat that will lead into Shabbat. Says the Mishnah, Ein solin basar batzal ubeitzah. You can't roast meat or an onion or an egg or whatever, ela kadeshi yatzulu mi ba'od unless they're roasted mi ba'od yom, i.e. you cannot put food on an open fire in such a way that it will continue to cook on Shabbat unless they're already cooked a certain amount before Shabbat. How much must they be cooked? This is a very famous term in halachic terminology in Shabbat. It must be cooked ki ma'achal ben drosai. The ma'achal, like the food of ben drosai. Ben drosai was a well-known robber, thief, baron, or the villain in the times of the Gemara, in the times of the Mishnah or Gemara, and he was well-known, so well-known that the authorities would always run after him. And so therefore, he would only eat his food. He would never fully cook his food. He would cook it enough to eat it so that he would be able to cook his food and then, run if somebody was on the way. How much is ma'achal ben drusai? Meaning, how much is cooking considered minimally cooked in order for you then to be able to eat it? The Bartanura says, "Hu shlish bishul." It's 1/3 cooked. And the Rambam actually in the Ravid say that it's a half. So it's a machloka between many Rishonim, whether it's a shlish, a third cooked, or whether it's a half cooked. Whatever it is, ma'achal ben drusai, the Bartanura says, ubekachu ra'ui la'achila, and therefore, if you cook it that amount, if it's yatzulu mi ba'od yom, it's ra'ui la'achila, it's edible. V'tu leka lemigzar, and therefore, we will not be gozer, we're not going to make the decree of shema yichateh begechalim. Very important term, shema yichateh begechalim. Shema yichateh begechalim means, if you're cooking on an open fire, one of the biggest challenges that anyone who was cooking faced was, remember, they didn't have ovens like we have, they didn't have modern technology, they cooked with whatever fuel they had, best case scenario wood, they would burn the wood, and then you would try to milk out however much heat you could out of the fuel that you had. And one way to do that was to stoke the flame. Yechateh. Lechatot means to stoke the flame. And that was something that people just did, just like we stir. Well, I'll open the pot and I'll check it or whatever. There was always there had to have been always a steak there, and they were always stoking the flame to make sure that the flame was hot enough, that the gechalim were hot enough. Almost like, in Israel, when you see a barbecue, there's always some guy at the barbecue going waving the thing out. That's stoking the flames. That's lechatot b'gechalim in order to make sure that there is sufficient heat to cook the meat. So Chazal, clearly based on the behavior that they saw, noticed that if you left meat on the fire, like as Shabbat was coming in, people would naturally be mechateh b'gechalim. They would see it, they would say, oh, it's not cooking, and they would stoke the flames. And that was an isura, both not just bishul, but havara. Havara means burning fire. Okay, so therefore they said the following: Ein tolim basar, they made a gzeira. You cannot put meat on the fire or anything else unless it's sufficiently cooked before Shabbat comes in. So therefore they won't have to leka lebigzar, they won't have to be gozer, that you're not allowed to cook shema yechateh b'gechalim. Meaning if it's half cooked, then you can leave it on the fire as Shabbat comes in, and we're not afraid that a person will stoke the flames. Similarly, ein notnim pat latanur im chashecha. You can't put bread in the oven when it's getting dark, and it'll cook in the oven as the oven cools off over time, and then you'll come back and you'll have fresh challah. Similarly, v'lo charara. A charara, look at the jastro, is a thick cake baked on coals. What do you know? Lo charara al gabe gechalim. You also can't, they had cakes that they would stick on the coals itself. Ostensibly, they would do this probably to yield the very last of the heat in the coal. Ela kadeshi yikrumu panam ba'od yom. Unless yikrumu, it has a keren panam means that there's a crust on the face of the bread. Mi ba'od yom. It has crusted on its edges once it's before the night has fallen. Okay, so it has to have cooked sufficiently that a person will look. If you look in the oven, you see that it's already cooked to some degree, and therefore, again, we're not worried that you'll then stoke the coals. Rabbi Lezer says no. It has to be cooked kadeshi yikrum hatachton shela, not the face. If you've ever seen, when you come to Israel, you see sometimes they have these ovens where they make the pita or the lafa. they take this and they stick it on the inside. They'll stick it on the oven. And that was one way, on the edge of the oven, that was one way they baked. So Eliezer says it has to have yikum hatachton shela, the bottom part of it, not the stuff, yikumu paneh, not the face, but the bottom of it also has to crust. And I guess you'd have to ask bakers which crusts first, the top part or the bottom part that's stuck. Either way, because remember the face is facing the fire. The fire is in the middle. But the tachton, the bottom part, is stuck to the oven, which is the heat of the walls. Which one comes first? It's actually machloket, who is more machmir, Rabbi Lezer, or the Tanakama. Either way, we've introduced this idea of Shama Yechateh B'Gachalim, maybe lest you come to stoke the coals, and this will come up again and again in Hilchot Shabbat, especially regarding Bishul. We'll stop here. If you have any comments or questions, as always, email me at arspoter@gmail.com. We'll dedicate the learning of this mission to the memory of my father, Harav Simcha ben Yitzchak. Have a great day.